بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وقال الثالث اللهم إني استأجرت أجراء فأعطيتهم أجرهم غير رجل واحد ترك الذي له وذهب فثمرت أجره حتى كثرت منه الأموال فجاءني بعد حين فقال يا عبد الله أدي إلي أجري فقلت له كل ما ترى من أجرك من الإبل والبقر والغنم والرقيق فقال يا عبد الله لا تستهزئ بي فقلت إني لا أستهزئ بك فأخذه كله فاستاقه فلم يترك منه شيئا اللهم فإن كنت فعلت ذلك ابتغاء وجهك فافرج عنا ما نحن فيه فانفرجت الصخرة فخرجوا يمشون أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على محمد نبيك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات اللهم إنا نسألك الإخلاص والتوفيق والقبول اللهم اجعلنا من المقبولين ولا تجعلنا من المطرودين. In the last hadith, in the last lesson, we were talking about one part of this long hadith. That the part was that farajati sakhratu fakharaju, that the rock moved slightly, and in the third time they were able to come out of the cave. So from this we mentioned the point about karamat. Anything that happens extraordinary, something that doesn't happen usually, when it happens on the hand of a prophet, then we call it mu'jiza, a miracle. And when it happens on the hand of a pious person, then we call it karamat. These only happen with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not in the control of a prophet or the pious person. And everything happens when the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. However, something greater than karamat and something greater than miracle is steadfastness. For a person to stay firm and steadfast on his deen, that's more greater and more virtuous and better than carrying out any karamat and any extraordinary act. So sometimes we see or we hear that this person is, mashallah, is known to be a pious person and a great scholar within the community, and we don't see much, extraordinary anything, event happening on his hand. So for us to think that, this guy is not performing any miracles, he's not a pious person, no. For a person to be pious, there is no condition that he has to perform any miracles, he has to perform any act like this. As long as you see the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in his life, that itself is something great. That itself is the biggest miracle itself. Junaid Baghdadi rahmatullahi alayhi, we mentioned that somebody stayed in his company for around 10 years, and he said that, look, I've not seen anything happening on your hand. We hear that a pious person is able to perform this act and do this and flying in the air, or he's able to do all these miracles. You've not done anything in these last 10 years. So Junaid Baghdadi rahmatullahi alayhi replied and said that, look, have you ever seen me do anything against the Shariat, against our Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? He said, no. So that itself is the biggest, greatest thing, that a person is able to be steadfast and firm on his deen. And remember, to stay firm on the deen is very difficult. It's very hard. That's why we need to do many things. One of them is do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Allah, I have this iman and I want to stay firm with this iman. I want to live in this world with this iman, and leave the world with this iman as well. So we have to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way possible. Yes, we have the masnoon du'as, we have the ayat of the Quran. One of them is رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ, where we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to divert our hearts away from the right path after guiding us. No, we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us firm and keep us on this path. Like this, there's another long dua mentioned by Imam Tabrani rahmatullahi alayhi in Mu'jam al-Kabir, where the first part of the dua itself is relevant to us, that Allahumma inni as'aluka thabata fil amr wal azimata ala al-rushd. Allahumma inni as'aluka thabata fil amr wal azimata ala al-rushd. That the meaning of this is that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ask you for strength or preservation, that I'm able to preserve and I'm able to stay firm on my ibadat and my obedience to yourself and on this deen. And also and determination in practicing upon this deen, that I stay firm and determined to continue practicing this deen and this deen and this religion that I have. Another dua that we have mentioned in Sahih Muslim, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught him this dua, very short dua, that Allahumma hdini wa saddidni, Allahumma hdini wa saddidni, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide me and direct me to the right path and make me firm and make me adhere to this right path as well. So Allahumma hdini wa saddidni, and in another narration, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wa sadada. So similar wording, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-hudada wa sadada, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ask you for guidance and also firmness and uprightness as well. And also we have the famous dua as well. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك. Our hearts are in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If He wants to twist and turn our hearts, He can just do that within this flick of movement of these two fingers. So we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Ya muqallib al-qulub, or changer of hearts, the being that who's got the hearts in control, thabbit qalbi ala dinik, make my heart firm upon your deen, make my heart firm upon your deen. So these are the few of the du'as, that Allahumma inni as'aluka al-thabata fil amr wal azimata ala al-rushd. Next one was Allahumma hdini wa saddidni, Allahumma hdini, ha dal noon ya, Allahumma hdini wa saddidni, sin dal wa saddidni, Allahumma hdini wa saddidni. Then we've got Ya muqallib al-qulub thabbit qalbi ala dinik, and we mentioned the ayat Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahma innaka antal wahhab. There are many other du'as as well. There are many other a'mal and deeds that if a person wants to stay firm on this deen, then he will be able to do so if he carries out those actions and makes a habit of making this du'a to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, just to summarize this long hadith that we've had, alhamdulillah, we've been going through this hadith. Today is the 17th Monday on this long hadith that we've had. There are many, many lessons that we've learned. Just to summarize a few of them. First, we mentioned the narrator himself, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. There are many lessons that we learned from this hadith. Number one was the passion the young Sahabas had at that time for the deen, the effort of the deen, the passion that they had from young age. They wanted to be, in part of the battles that they were taking place at that time. He was in the age of under 15. They tried to sneak in, but then he was refused, and etc. So the passion the Sahabas had from young age. Number two, we mentioned about that Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, is from among those Sahaba who narrated the hadith the most, known as the Muqthirin hadith. He narrated 2,630 hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, at the same time, he was very cautious in narrating the hadith. He wasn't just picking anything up and just passing it on. No, he was very cautious, and he used to filter and make sure that everything is correct and authentic. Along with this, we also learned that the love that Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu had for sunnah, following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Certain sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was said that everybody can do, and certain sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was said that he just did for the occasion. It's not something that everybody has to do. But Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu was said that no, my Prophet did it, I want to try to do that as well. For example, bowing down whilst he was on the path, even though there was no tree there anymore, or entering into the town in a certain, using a certain exit or entrance. So all of these things. So what we learn from this is that we need to follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say follow my ahadith. He said follow my sunnah. So what we need to do is we can't just pick up any hadith kitab and say, oh, hadith is saying this, we need to follow this. No, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said follow my sunnah. So we pick up the book of sunnahs and we follow that. We don't have that knowledge, we don't have the ability and the capacity to pick any hadith up and say, oh, the hadith is saying this, or we should do this, that means I should do this. The hadith are there for the ulama to discuss within themselves, to come to a conclusion, to come to a mas'ala and to a ruling. It's not for any lame person or any normal person to pick up any hadith kitab and say the hadith is saying this, but we need to follow this. No, the hadith are there. So for example, Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi may have brought a hadith there, but he has brought the hadith in there for certain reason. Now what is the reasoning behind it? The ulama have the capacity and the understanding and the knowledge of why this hadith is there. So we don't follow the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Yes, a hadith come in the sunnah as well, but we leave that to the ulama to tell us, okay, which hadith we need to follow. For a normal person who is not a scholar, who doesn't have the understanding and the capacity, including myself, we don't just pick any hadith up. We pick up the sunnah kitab and we see that, okay, how many sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ are into our life, into my life. So these were the few lessons that we learned. Number two, we learned about the mashwara. Making mashwara is important, that we consult each other. Even if it's on a small matter at home that we want to, for example, plan to prepare something for the following week, that what should we cook. So even that matter as well is a small matter. But discussion between the husband and the wife will create unity. Or, we want to purchase some sort of an item for the home. So there's a discussion between the parent and the children. Now this will also create unity and will build in that the habit of the children of consulting each other and approaching the children as well. And obviously we've got the other mashuras that take place as well. Through mashura there's always khair and barakat in there as well. And the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be upon the jama'at. Next lesson that we learned was about the importance and the adab and the power of dua. We don't undermine any du'as. Any dua that we make, first of all, if the conditions are there, then we have yaqeen in our dua that the dua I have made, inshallah, will be accepted in any of the three ways. Any of the three ways, my dua will be accepted as long as the conditions and the adab of the dua are there, then inshallah our du'as will be accepted. Another lesson that we learned was about good deeds, how important good deeds are. If our actions are there, our niyat is there, sabr is there, and also ikhlas is there, then that action will become a good deed. Action will become a good action. So if an action is there, we've got the niyat, we've got ikhlas. Niyat meaning we have a niyat. Any niyat is there. Then at the same time we have sabr in that action as well. Then inshallah that action will also become a good action as well. And at the same time, Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anh mentioned that we should be done only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we have iman and amal salih, when you have iman and good deeds, then this will take us into Jannah inshallah. Then we mentioned about the topic of tawassul and wasila, taking means in our du'as. For example, through the means of Asma'ul Husna. We say that to Allah, that through the means of the Asma'ul Husna, we ask our dua to be accepted. Number two, we make the means of any good deed that we may have done. That through this good deed, I want my dua to be accepted. For example, in this hadith that we learned, that three individuals made the dua using a good deed that they have done in their actions, in their life. Number three, we learned about was making a means of a certain individual that we know that this person was paban and very punctual on following the deen. We know that this person was a very close friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we make the means of this individual in our dua that Allah, because of this person is very close to you, accept my dua. So this was the topic of wasila. Then we mentioned about the main lesson that we learned from the first individual, the dua of the first individual was about birrul walidain, obedience to the parents. That was the main key prime lesson that we learned from the dua of the first individual, that be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we will see the benefits of this obedience in this world as well, that Allah will remove difficulties, and we mention many virtues as well. And at the same time, inshallah, in the Jannah, in the Akhirat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved for us a Jannah as well, inshallah. And at the same time, a person who's disobedient to the parents, and he will see the harms of that, even in this world as well, and he will face the consequences as well. Number two, this was the dua of the first individual. These were the few lessons that we learned from the first person. Second person we learned was about taqwa. Taqwa meaning that we live in this world in such a way that our iman, our ibadat, our akhlaq, our muamalat, our transactions, our dealings, our social life are not affected by any evil, any sins. Everything is according to how our deen requires us to. So nothing wrong in our aqidah, nothing wrong in our ibadat, nothing wrong in our social transactions and dealings and etc. So if we have this and we are on this path, making sure that our sins are not affecting us, meaning we stay away from sins, we refrain from sins as much as possible, then this will build taqwa in our life. This will build taqwa in our life. Then we mentioned about the benefits of taqwa, we mentioned about how to bring taqwa in our life, and then we also mentioned about few examples of ulama and scholars and akabir who have taqwa in their life as well. And we mentioned that one of the points to build taqwa is our company. We have to make sure that our company is good. Company is physical company, that physically who do we stay with, and also nowadays online, virtually and digitally, who are we connecting ourselves with? That will also have an impact on ourselves. Bishr Hafiz rahmatullahi alayhi said that 60 shayateen cannot harm a person as much as one individual can harm that person. So that one individual, the amount of harm that he can do, 60 shayateen will do. So that is important that we take care of who we befriend. Another lesson we learned from the second individual was about haya, modesty. Then we also mentioned about the types of modesty, how we can build modesty in our life. And then we mentioned the dua that Allahumma tahir qalbi waghfir dhanbi wa hassin farji. Allahumma tahir qalbi, that Allah purify my heart and also forgive my sins and protect my private parts. So the second individual, the key lesson that we learn from the second individual is about refraining from sins. Refraining from sins, we'll do the movement ourselves. We do the harkat ourselves. That if you're about to fall into the sin, we force ourselves out of it. That time, the dua which is made is also accepted. That dua that we made at that time is also accepted. So the key lesson that we learn from the dua of the second individual, how important it is for us to refrain from ourselves. We force ourselves to take ourselves away from the sin. Number 3, the third person's dua we learned about was amanat, trust. How important it is that we adhere to the laws and the huquq and the rights of trust. How we take care of belongings of each other, and we also take care of what we have been given as a trust. We take care of that. We mentioned of the types, and we also mentioned the virtues of being trustworthy as well. Then concluding the hadith, we mentioned about the karamat, the belief of karamat. We also mentioned, one point that we have not been mentioned actually, which is new, is that remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the time of ease. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remember us at the time of difficulty. The hadith of Musnad Ahmad goes, that ta'arraf ila Allah fi raha ya'rifka fi shiddah. That when you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the time of happiness and goodness and everything's flourishing, everything's good, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those days as well. Why? Because we are going to face difficulty somewhere in our life. Now at that time when we turn to Allah, our voices will be familiar to the angels and to Allah. So then our du'as will see the acceptance of our dua very quickly. Now if you only remember Allah in the time of difficulties, then there's no guarantee that our dua will be, accepted as quick as if you had the first quality where we were to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the time of happiness and goodness as well. Then our dua will be accepted in the time of difficulties as well. Now the last thing that we leave today with is a question. There's 2 questions. The rock was a barrier and a difficulty for them. Now what we need to ponder upon is that what is the difficulty, what is the rock in my life? Is it a financial difficulty in my life? Or is there any family issues in my life? Or is there any other issues, work issues, health issues, etc.? Has that become the rock in my life? Is that a difficulty or is that a problem in my life? Then after that, the next question we leave onto this as well, that what if we were the 4th person in that cave? Do we have any amal or any deed in my life that I could have presented in my dua to Allah, that, oh Allah, this deed I did in my life was only for your sake? If we have that, then it's possible that we were the 4th one, and because of us, the rock would have moved. If we don't have that, then it's possible that those 3 individuals will still be in the cave because of us. So that's why we need to take the lesson from this hadith as well, and check in our life as well. That is there any amal that I have done only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There was no other motive, there was no other intention, and there was nothing else. I only did that deed, whatever deed it is, but I only did it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person has that, then he should do shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he should build on that. And check the rest of the amal that he is doing, are they, with ikhlas or not? Are they only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Inshallah, we'll conclude this today's dars on these 2 questions, that what is the rock in my life? What is the issue and what is the barrier in my life? And do I have any amal, do I have any deed in my life that I could present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my dua to remove this difficulty and remove this rock in my life as well? Then inshallah we'll make 1 or 2 point mention next week, and we'll move on to the next chapter next week inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to bring these lessons and points in our life, in my life, and make us these hadith lessons and these durus of tafsir a means of bringing positive changes into our life. Allahumma ameen. جزا الله عنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأهله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. جزاك الله خير.